Hey guys, it's me, Seren, back with another video. This is going to be another review video. I hoped I'd get these review videos out a little bit faster, but they take a really long time to film and upload, so I'm just going to roll them out as I can. This is going to be a review video for Wonder Woman 1984, which this is another movie. Okay, so I liked Wonder Woman 1984. I did not like the original Wonder Woman. I believe I did a review video on it, so I will include a link to that review in the description box for those of you that want to watch it. I didn't really enjoy the first Wonder Woman. I thought it was a beautiful film. I thought it was beautifully shot. It had gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous cinematography. It had amazing set pieces, amazing, stunning, stunning costumes. But I did not like Gal Gadot. I didn't like Gal Gadot's casting as Wonder Woman, as Diana. I wanted someone else, which we've talked about in live and we've talked about in other videos. A lot of you guys know I really wanted Annabeth from Percy Jackson. I think you guys said her name is Alexandra Daddario or something like that. So I never liked Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. I really didn't like her as Wonder Woman in the first movie. I felt like the movie wasn't Wonder Woman. I felt like the movie was Wonder Friends. I felt like Gal Gadot had a very weak storyline. She had a weak plot line. Her acting was not there. Her accent was really strong. It was hard for me to understand her. And I felt like the supporting cast around her, like Chris Pine and the woman from Shaun of the Dead that played like the secretary and, you know, this like band of misfits that like Chris Pine puts together to like escort her or whatever. They were like the draw of the movie. Like they were really funny and charismatic and great actors. And but I felt like it's supposed to be a movie about Wonder Woman, not like the Wonder Friends. And I just felt really let down by the first one. I felt like the first Wonder Woman was very stylish. Again, like very stylish, very visually stunning, beautiful cinematography, some great action scenes, even though Gal Gadot is a model and sometimes this bitch was like strutting. She was like strutting across the battlefield. Like, why is she strutting across the battlefield? But anyways, but I felt like the plot was a mess. The whole third act of Wonder Woman just felt completely apart. The original Wonder Woman I'm talking about, which is ironic because now I feel like this is a criticism that's being put on Wonder Woman 1984, which I actually think had a much stronger third act than the original Wonder Woman movie. The whole Ares plotline made absolutely no sense. And so with Wonder Woman 1984, with the original Wonder Woman, I felt like it was style over substance. I felt like the actual actress playing Wonder Woman was bad. Wonder Woman's development was bad. Her storyline was bad. The storyline and the plot of the movie was bad and totally nonsensical in the third act, but it was just gorgeous. It was just beautiful to look at. To this day, like if I come across Wonder Woman, even though I didn't like it, on TNT or something, this is a movie, kind of like what I said about Soul, I would put on, like, muted or, like, turned down just because it's, like, gorgeous to look at. I love the clothes in the original Wonder Woman. I felt like Wonder Woman 1984 was the reverse. It's a much uglier movie visually, but I felt the storyline, the plot, Gal Gadot's acting, seeing this kind of more mature Diana, much improved. But the movie is ugly. I feel like this is another example of like visual aesthetics really influencing, I guess you could say like the public opinion, because I feel like for me the main difference between the original Wonder Woman movie and Wonder Woman 1984 is that Wonder Woman 1984 is a pretty ugly movie. I did say in my live stream that I feel like this like 80s nostalgia and having movies and shows and stuff set in the 80s doesn't work for me. I didn't like Stranger Things. I liked it well enough, but I didn't really care, you know, for the setting. I tried watching Glow, the Netflix like women's wrestling show. I couldn't get into that. I feel like the 80s aesthetic is a really hard aesthetic to translate into 2020, like to translate into a reboot or a remake. It's a really hard aesthetic to sort of capture. We have a very romanticized, you know, aesthetically, idea of, you know, the Great War, especially in the United States. Motherfuckers are like obsessed with like the two world wars. And so I feel like the setting of the original Wonder Woman was just really beautiful, and just the way the movie was shot. The cinematography was gorgeous. It had Zack Snyder's little fingerprints all over it, even though I know Zack and Deborah were also executive producers for Wonder Woman 1984. It just wasn't as visually appealing. And I definitely feel like as the production values of projects, you know, continues to increase, we're going to continue to have this like style versus substance type of conversation. The first Wonder Woman, I felt, had more style, but was lacking in substance. Wonder Woman 1984, I felt had more substance. I felt it had a stronger plot line, a stronger storyline. I felt Diana herself was much stronger, much more mature. I don't know if Gal Gadot took some acting lessons. Her acting was much improved. Her speech was much improved. They did a lot better with the accents this time around. I felt like 1984 had a much better plot line and storyline, but aesthetically it wasn't as nice to look at. The cinematography wasn't as good, but I felt the core of the storyline, which is Diana, Wonder Woman, was much improved in Wonder Woman 1984. I love seeing Diana sort of, you know, all grown up in a way, and I loved that the movie was set in DC. And they filmed this movie, I feel like they started filming this movie like 2 or 3 years ago, because like I remember people saying, I never saw them filming, but I remember people saying that like they saw them filming, and they saw them like that they had like set up Commander Salamander, and that they had set some things up. So like they really filmed this movie in DC, which I enjoyed. Like I always love seeing DC. I always love seeing my city in film, because even though a lot of movies are set in DC, they very rarely actually film in DC. Another movie that they did that I love that stands out is Minority Report, which is my movie. But I love that, you know, seeing Diana kind of like more mature, more grown up. She's working in which we kind of got little hints of this in Justice League, right? She's working at the museum, and she's, you know, dealing with the sort of fallout of being lonely. And, you know, we got introduced to Wonder Woman to this Wonder Woman. Let me put it this way. I felt like we got introduced to this Wonder Woman, and then what we got with the original Wonder Woman was almost like an origin story. And now we're kind of like looping back around to, you know, seeing some of the experiences that made the Diana that we meet in Justice League, right? It's almost, or not Justice League, in Batman versus Superman, that is then kind of like expounded upon a little bit in Justice League. Obviously, they did all these movies out of order because DCEU caved and caved and gave into the pressure, and, you know, they rushed to put out Justice League, and then they chopped and screwed the shit with Joss Whedon, and now obviously we're getting the Snyder Cut very soon, but clearly should have been like Man of Steel 2, Batman, if they're going to go with Ben Affleck as Batman, and then some type of Wonder Woman movie. You know, they should have given everyone a standalone movie. Aquaman should have came out. The Cyborg movie should have came out. Flashpoint should have came out before getting to Justice League, but we kind of just like jumped in. So we got this introduction to Diana in Batman vs. Superman as this kind of like really mature figure, and then we never really circled back around to some of the things that made her that way until 1984. So I've seen some people saying like they didn't like the 1984 setting, which again I get, because the 80s, I have a lot of issues with like these 80s nostalgia properties. As I've said previously, they give me a very much undercurrent of like Make America Great Again. Even though I know some of you said that Wonder Woman 1984 is like critiquing the 80s greed is good mentality, which I get. I don't really think the message could have been pushed a little bit harder in the end. I am going to talk about that in the bad and the ugly. I do feel the message kind of like lost steam in the third act of the film. But I just feel like in terms of aesthetics and aesthetically, like people have this obsession with the 80s, but the 80s magic, I say this is someone that loves a lot of 80s films, but you just can't recapture that magic just by like throwing a fanny pack on somebody and like saying like it's the 80s. I just feel like it's a hard time to replicate. And for me, Pedro Pascal and his, you know, sort of Trump adjacent figure, obviously Max Lord, was the weakest link in the movie for me. The first Wonder Woman felt like the main character of Diana was just sort of leaning on everybody to get her through the movie. The whole supporting cast was acting circles around Gal. And it seemed like Gal's plot line just wasn't there for me. In Wonder Woman 84, Diana actually stood on her own in a way that I liked much better this time around. This one felt much more like Wonder Woman to me. If you guys remember in my original review, I definitely reviewed it because I'm remembering now. I was like, this just didn't feel like Wonder Woman. It just didn't feel like Wonder Woman. I was like, some of the stuff of her being like doe-eyed, Bambi, innocent Diana that's never been out in the world, oh, a baby, was cute. And like, we all like that stuff, but she wasn't Wonder Woman. This was the first movie that I felt like I actually saw her being Wonder Woman, and also seeing Diana, the person that I wanted to see, the person that's like learning some lessons and like figuring out like who she's going to be, in this mortal world now. I liked seeing that. I probably, again, would not have said it in the 80s, but I know why they said it in the 80s. They clearly said it in the 80s so they could like set up this Donald Trump type of dichotomy and make this criticism against greed, and to make this criticism against the 80s corporate culture of greed and nastiness and, all these things that people really see as emblematic of Donald Trump. We're seeing so many Donald Trump figures in film right now and in television shows, and as emblematic of kind of everything that's wrong with the world. So I see why the choice was made to set it in the 80s, but I'm tired of 80s nostalgia projects. Totally. So in this movie, we meet Diana working at the museum. We meet Barbara, who I loved. And I'm no motherfucking Kristen Wiig fan. I normally don't fucking like Kristen Wiig, but I really liked Barbara's character. I love the way that Kristen Wiig embodied her and acted her as, this sort of mouse figure, how she's overlooked by everyone. She's shy, she's mousy. I've seen some people kind of like poking fun at the comic book, like nerd trope of giving someone like glasses and bad hair. That's the trope. This is my thing. I feel like Wonder Woman 1984 is very campy. Very, very, very campy. And I love camp. I love the camp element of it. Like Batman and Robin is like camp. It's like campy goodness. And I do feel like one of the elements of camp is easily identifiable visual cues. And I didn't think that it was done in a way, like, again, like, it's easy to, like, memeify and, like, poke fun, but I do feel like that was, like, part of the campiness. I feel like it was pretty deliberate, the way that they, like, styled Barbara. I mean, I get it if, like, people didn't like that. They wanted some other type of styling, but I thought they made some, like, really deliberate choices to sort of ramp up the campiness, especially because, it's set in the 80s. It's set in 1984. I really enjoyed the character of Barbara. I love the way that she was set up. I love the way that Barbara and Diana ended up becoming friends. Like, I wish they had leaned into that a little bit more, even instead of, like, bringing back Steve and bringing him back kind of so soon and so early. But I wish they had, like, made Barbara and Diana become, like, real tight, like, besties, like super, super, super tight. We do see them hanging out. We do see them have dinner. We do see them kind of like bonding. And to me, that was like some of the strongest elements of the film. It reminded me of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, when we see Buffy and Faith really getting close and having this kind of understanding for one another. Yet at the same time, we can see how Buffy and Faith are different. We can see how Diana and Barbara are different. We can see how, even though they're coming from a similar place, they're going to diverge in paths, with one woman feeling like, well, I'm going to use my power in a certain type of way, and the other woman feeling like, well, I'm going to use my power in a totally different type of way. We see, and there's these two wonderful scenes that they set up where, Barbara's walking home and she gets attacked by this like drunk man on the street. And Diana saves her. Diana and Barbara was giving the gay, lesbian overtones. Like, they keep putting these lesbian overtones in these films and these TV shows, and then like not trying to see, like, there was a little bit of queer baiting. I will say that. They try to like throw it in there, but then they don't want to see it through to the end. Or I don't know if it was like unintentional, But Barbara and Diana had some chemistry. The chemistry was on 1,000. Absolutely. When Diana saved her and Barbara's like looking up into her eyes. And I was like, yes, like this how I like my Wonder Woman. Like, I want my Wonder Woman to be that bitch. Like, my Wonder Woman will take your nigga and she'll take your bitch too. I was like, yes, finally. I finally am seeing Wonder Woman. Finally. And then later on, after Barbara wishes to be more like Diana and she starts to like get Diana's power and she like comes across this drunk man again and she starts beating the shit out of him. Wonderful scene. Maybe even a perfectly crafted scene because we've already had the pre-experience of knowing thematically, you know, throughout the themes of the film and what we've seen thus far, that like Barbara is ignored, Barbara is put down, Barbara is bullied, Barbara has been attacked by this man previously. So now that she has this power, why shouldn't she beat this nigga ass? Like, is she really wrong? You know, we're being set up to explore some of these moral questions, right? These ideas about morality and what would we do if we had this power, which also again reminded me of Buffy and Faith, because Buffy and Faith have the same power, but they're coming from two totally different places. And, you know, Faith feels like, how can you tell me that I can't use my power for what I want? You didn't go through what I went through. You didn't come up the way I came up. You know, you're living happy in Sunnydale, even though it's the Hellmouth, with your friends and family, and everything's great for Buffy Summers. Like, you don't know what it's like for me. I'm gonna fucking take care of me and I'm going to do what I want because I see how the world really is. And so, like, the scene where Barbara's, like, kicking the shit out of this dude and then the homeless man ends up, like, running up and being like, what are you doing? And then she, like, leaves. But it's just, like, a perfect... It was one of those scenes where it was, like, a perfect setup that led to, like, a perfect payoff. Like, and now we see how she's going to start becoming Cheetah and start becoming swayed to the dark side, and, you know, almost like it's almost set up like a tragedy, this story arc with Barbara. And I thought it was really well done, really well written, really amazingly set up, especially because we see that Barbara and Diana have had these interactions, that they are friends, you know, that they are very similar. I don't even think we needed the Max Lord Trump greed is good plotline. Like, it should have just been about these, like, two women, which is another thing. Like, they seem really afraid for Wonder Woman to be seen as, like, a woman-centric piece. And in every Wonder Woman movie, they, like, introduce these, like, male characters. And I know there's male characters in Wonder Woman, but they need to, like, lean into the woman shit. Overall, though, like, I really enjoyed what I felt was honestly the main theme, the main thread line of the film, which I felt was Barbara and Diana's relationship. And then the way that Barbara sort of becomes a villain and kind of like gives in to these powers. Because I also felt like that was sort of making the argument that your powers are really what you make of them. Like Diana, which I love the opening for Wonder Woman. I know it's like taking me so long to talk about the opening, but I love the opening. I was like, finally, like, these are the Amazons that I want to see. Like, I want to see my girls working out. I want to see my girls fighting. I want to see my girls competing. Like, I want them to do a Wonder Woman movie that's like, that takes place totally on Themyscira, about, maybe not about Diana's childhood, but about, I don't know, like her teenage years or, you know, something like that. That's just like her training and like the women and, you know, all these things before Steve kind of like intrudes in. I would love to see that type of thing. And they at least gave us like a little taste of it with this amazing opening. Like, I loved the opening of like the little girl, baby Diana, participating in the competition and trying to like win and cheating, right? And then her mother, Robin Wright, I always want to say Robin Wright Penn, even though she's no longer Robin Wright Penn. Her mother like pulls her to the side and she's like, you can't cheat. Like, you took the little short path and we know you did because you didn't like hit your marker like you were supposed to. It doesn't matter if you finish first, right? Like, the whole point of it is supposed to be, you know, to be a true hero. It served me a little bit of little Hercules tease there. Like, to be a true hero, like, you can't cheat. You can't take shortcuts. You know, you can't lie. Like, you have to, you know, reveal in the truth. And the truth is, like, you took the short path. You didn't win fair and square against the others. Like, that is the truth. It's not just about winning. You know, it's not just about that you have these powers or whatever, you know, like, it's not just about that you're strong and you're fast. All that stuff is great, but like being a true hero, being a true leader means, embracing the truth, embracing honesty, winning fair and square, doing, acts of bravery, acts of integrity, acts of honor, doing, making the choice, because that was a choice, right? Like, Diana made a choice to like take the shortcut, take the short path, and she trying to win. But making the choice to do the right thing. And then we kind of have the introduction of this. So we have this early scene that kind of like sets up that ideology. And then we have the introduction of this character of Barbara that ends up with the exact same powers as Diana, but chooses to use them in a different way. And then they introduce these like men. And, I didn't care for the men. I enjoyed the Chris Pine cameo, even though I felt like they really introduced Chris Pine only to make Diana seem like a little less gay, because the Diana and Barbara, the sparks were like flying. So I kind of felt like the decision was made maybe to like bring Chris Pine back. I know that like the whole thing with the wishes and the stone, like why wouldn't she wish for, Steve to come back? And then even the part where she says, like, I just want this one thing. Like, I spent all this time doing everything for everyone. I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to make the right choices. Why can't I have something for me? Why can't I have this one thing? Why not? Why? And even that is like more reinforcement of this message of like, you can't always have what you want. Being a true hero, being a true leader, doing the right thing sometimes means that, doing the right thing and always doing the right thing from SWAT. It sometimes means that you have to do things that you don't want to do. And so I like the idea of, again, bringing Chris Pine back, not in any real, narrative capacity. Like, he really doesn't do anything for the story. He doesn't, like, save the day or, like, make any real choices. He just kind of, like, appears as this wish fulfillment, right, for Diana, who ultimately has to, like, make the choice of, like, I have to do the right thing and, like, even though it hurts me, like, even though it's not what I want to do, especially when juxtaposed against Barbara, who's like, I'm just going to do whatever I want with my powers and it's all about me. Like, what makes a hero? What makes someone a hero? What makes someone true and brave and honest? What are the choices that you have to make if this is the mantle that you're going to wear and that you're going to carry, as Wonder Woman? So as I said previously, I did not like that this movie was set in the 80s. I'm kind of over nostalgia pieces. The original Wonder Woman movie was just like very visually stunning in a way that this movie was not, and in a way that I don't think this movie could be, because the 80s was just like a different time period. And even Diana, it seems like they really downplayed a lot of the kind of 80s fashion for her, because there's sort of this idea that it's like cheap and tacky and cheesy. And it was really only like played up more so for like laughs in terms of the stuff that like Barbara's wearing and the stuff that like Chris Pine, when he has his little like clothing montage. And then Barbara actually, as she becomes Cheetah, they get her in a more 80s sort of punk style. But I feel like our idea of the 80s and the 80s aesthetic is really filtered through this nostalgia that just, I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't find it attractive. I don't find it visually attractive. I don't find the nostalgia factor of it to be anything. It always has this undercurrent of like, make America great, that I don't like. Even in this film where they're trying to like not poke fun, but be critical of that message. I didn't like it. So speaking of that message, I felt like the introduction of Pedro Pascal as a way to kind of like drive this message home, they really dropped the ball with that. I don't mind the idea of Pedro Pascal as this like Trump figure in theory, but like, it's literally like a caricature of Trump. It's not a real character. Max Lord is not depicted as a real person. They try to like introduce this character, his like son, but we never see them at home. Never see really any other family members. We don't get a taste of like, what is his life like outside of trying to get this like oil company off the ground, outside of the fact that he's a scammer, a grifter, a shuckster, all these things. It's just like they made a caricature of Donald Trump. Again, I see why they did that, but that's not how you make a movie. That's not a character. Like, if you're going to really do like a Donald Trump type figure, as much as you don't want to show the home life of that person, and I'm not saying like make the person sympathetic, you don't have to make him a sympathetic figure, but even though they still tried to make him a sympathetic figure because they still had him renounce his wish for his son in the end, spoilers, obviously, spoilers, but not that you have to make him a sympathetic figure the same way as like Barbara or somebody like that, but like they didn't give us nothing. They didn't give us anything. This was like the shallowest rendering of a Max Lord figure. Like, he didn't really have any good lines. Like, he literally just existed to be this sort of like living physical embodiment of like the greed is good mentality. I want more, 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 by like even letting him physically sort of turn into the stone or the Jinn character and be able to give out wishes, but you know, he takes something in return. Obviously, again, this is meant to be very much a metaphor or a parallel for our current, you know, political climate, our socio-political situation of the greed and the capitalism and the I'm going to give you what you want, but I'm going to take something from you. I'm taking your humanity. For Diana, her power started disappearing. You know, the whole thing was, you can get what you think you want from this person or this entity, but what, again, like, what are you giving up in return? Which is something that Diana even says at one point, very much trying to make the statement that we're giving up our humanity, our civility, our democracy, our country, by giving into this idea of Trump and greed and all that stuff. But they told us, I always say, every writer has learned this, you know, show, don't tell. They did not show us. They did not show us Max Lord. They did not show us this character. They just told us. They just basically like told us everything. And so we know by the end that Diana is supposed to be like triumphing basically over Donald Trump and over these ideas about greed and capitalism. They just tell us. Even that last scene where she has the lasso like on the TV or whatever, and she's like talking, monologuing, like she's just talking, like she's not really, we haven't really seen anything to like back up this talk. It's just empty sort of words. We haven't had enough character development. We haven't like seen enough. We don't have enough, you know, material. There's no foundation for what we're watching at the end of the movie. The whole third act of the movie really falls flat. The final battle scene between Cheetah and Diana feels like they ran out of time. It seems like they ran out of time and money. I know that like COVID affected the production elements of this film, and also like the film getting like pushed back, but it definitely seems like they just decided that like they ran out of time and money, and then they just decided to like release what they had, because there wasn't very much action. There weren't very many fight scenes, especially in comparison to the first one that's literally set during a war. And the fight scenes that we did get, like between Diana and Cheetah, seemed like oddly rendered, oddly shot. I did see someone say that Cheetah looked like a Jellicle cat from Cats, which I get. Like, the CGI was not very good. Again, like the CGI and the cinematography in the first one was way better than this one. It definitely just seems like they ran out of time and money and plot. And so they just decided, like, whatever, like, just have Diana like give this little monologue so that everybody could like renounce their fucking wish and we could wrap it up. I don't really think Max Lord should have even been introduced. Like, he just wasn't necessary. Like, they already had the artifact, and Diana made her wish. Chris Pine came back. Barbara made her wish, and she started getting the powers. I just wish that, again, it had just been, like, strictly about, like, Diana and Barbara as these, like, two flip sides of the same coin. I do love that type of thought process. This is how I feel about Batman and Joker. Like, really, they're the same. Like, you know, this is how I feel like this is, again, I thought of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Faith and Buffy. This is something that really, I think, gets to, like, the core of humanity and human beings, and this idea of, like, what type of people are we going to be is up to us. It's a choice that we have to make for ourselves every day of like, am I going to do the right thing? Am I going to do the truthful thing? Am I going to do the honest thing, the brave thing? Am I going to be that person, or am I going to like go left instead of right? And that could have been explored, I think, way more and way deeply in the interactions between Barbara and Diana. And we already had the stone. Like, I don't know, they could have figured out another way for all these people to like get their ultimate wish. Or I don't know, they could have even just like did away with that. Again, that just seemed like a Trump thing put in there because of like what's going on in our real world and in our real lives. But maybe something could have been done a little bit differently to come to that conclusion, while we really used Barbara and Diana as this like exploration of like, what type of people do we want to be? Having them have these same exact powers and being the flip side of the same coin. And then ultimately Diana having to renounce her wish, which she didn't want to do, as a way for her to, you know, ultimately be brave and make the right choice and make the right decision, which is something that we see, you know, getting set up in the opening scenes of the movie when she's competing back on Themyscira. The introduction of the Max Lord figure just was not fleshed out enough. It wasn't written well enough, and it really fell apart by the end of the movie. It was just kind of like cheap how they got there, because they didn't really flesh out the Max Lord character, give us a reason. Like, why am I rooting for him to, like, choose his son? I know nothing about his son, except his name is Alistair, and for some reason he's, like, I don't know, Asian or something. Like they just have him, like, pop up in the office every now and then and, like, overhear some mean things. Like, it's just very rudimentary use of, like, the Max Lord figure for this type of plotline, and it felt unnecessary. Again, this movie didn't look as good in terms of the cinematography, the styling, the costumes, the set design. It just wasn't as aesthetically pleasing as the first movie. The cinematography is not as good. There's not as many action scenes. And the action that we get seems like weirdly rendered in terms of the CGI, and it's just not as good. It's not choreographed as well as the first one, sort of outside of that opening scene on Themyscira. I don't feel like it was choreographed as well. The action scenes definitely got let down by that final Diana and Cheetah fight. They built up this, like, thing with this, like, golden armor just for the armor to kind of end up being useless. In the end, it doesn't really serve a huge purpose. You know, they brought Steve back. They never really explained, like, how did that work with him being in someone else's body? That was never really explained. Like, all this body swapping, like, this body swapping shit is the new jam, huh? Like, putting people in somebody else's body. That's never explained. Like, they kind of have some dialogue about it, but it's never really explained exactly how it works. And then they never even show, like, she wishes for him to go back while he's off camera. So, like, does he just disappear? Like, they never really explain exactly how it works. He's just brought back because Diana really has to, like, make a choice at the end. It's like a plot armor. Like, Diana has to make a choice at the end to send him back. So even though I enjoy Chris Pine, you guys know I like Chris Pine. I think he's really funny and witty. I enjoyed what was basically an extended cameo, but it was kind of pointless. And there were a lot of little things that made no sense. Like, why did Diana steal that jet? Like, I know they wanted to introduce the concept of the invisible jet, and I loved that they introduced the concept of the invisible jet. She's been trying to, like, work with, like, force fields, and she, like, makes the jet invisible. Love that. The lead up to that made absolutely no sense. Like, they stole a jet. Why? Did she not think? And she seemed, like, surprised. Like, oh, yeah, we're stealing. The writing for that could have been better. Like, this one actually I think suffered from, like, them having this idea of, like, they really wanted to, like, make this point of, like, greed is bad. Donald Trump is bad. We have to make the right choices in our lives. And so little things kind of fell by the wayside. Like, how exactly does Steve coming back work? You know, they wanted to show us the invisible jet, but they didn't really write us a solid situation on, like, how we got to the invisible jet. You know, the scene of them flying in the invisible jet with the fireworks was just that was like a visually stunning, aesthetically pleasing scene, but it was style over substance, because the substance of that particular scene, like, didn't make any sense. Again, it seems like they ran out of time and money, and the cinematography is not as good, the CGI is not as good, and the ending just kind of, like, ended up falling flat. So, Wonder Woman 1984 review with spoilers. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Food for thought as always. See you guys next time. Peace!